right, welcome to Raising Funds for World Domination, day number 326. So, there are no updates on any of these items. So I'll just jump right into work on the terminal block mining game. Give it a build. So I worked on this a little bit today. I'm realizing this may end up being another one of those things that I end up getting stuck grinding away at for a while, kind of like the screen layer merging thing. I think there's already, now that I'm kind of doing a fuzz test, I think there's already some like oh, interesting. That's new. Okay. Yeah, so there's probably, I think there's a number of potential bugs in the memory chunk loading. It's not surprising because I never actually tested it before. And there's a whole bunch of concurrency race conditions possible. I fixed one today, but I think I'm gonna have to change my approach for the testing. So I'm thinking I'll probably add something like I'll create the concept of like a signal, like a chunk signal or something. And then when for the unit test, when I instantiate the in-memory chunks class, I'll have like a debug flag, and when I run it with the debug flag, it'll create a log of all the signals that it sent out, and then after that I'll have like something to evaluate the correctness of the signals. I'll just go over the script and like make sure I'll just like replay the set of signals as a unit test, and then yeah, that'll basically just like play through the state machine, and then I can just validate that it's actually correct. Like it doesn't so like supposedly impossible state transitions don't happen, like a chunk loading twice, or going from like pending to loaded, which is kind of the main thing that there's probably a lot of bugs for. Then I guess maybe I can also yeah, I think that'll probably work. Orthoplex 64. Greetings. And I might refactor this interface too. That may be the first thing I do. I'll just create an enum called like chunk signal. And then this will just have one method. Or two methods. This get authorized client ID, and then one called like, chunk signal callback or something. And then it is a signal, and then a list of cuboid addresses. So it passes sometimes. But then other times it fails. Just like that. Thanks for the hearts. Yeah, it's hard reading through this. If I just had like a chunk signal script to validate, then I could error out on that. I could print more clear debug info. And with this approach, it might work a bit better once I make this more complicated, because the whole point of adding the tests is so I can make sure it's correct while I make it more complicated. I haven't even gotten to that phase yet. I haven't even fixed the existing bugs. chat's a lot quieter tonight. I guess it's probably because I haven't put no videos out in the last couple of days. Move that. That's the thing. If you don't constantly put out the maximum amount of content, nobody clicks on your channel. Thank you for the hearts. We're down to one concurrent viewer. Congrats if you were that lucky viewer. game require compilation? Theoretically, no. So there are precompiled jars that I have on GitHub, but the precompiled jar has there's a shared object library in it that's compiled into it, and if you try to launch it and it fails to run that, which may commonly happen depending on your machine, because it's not super portable, you can pass the flag disable JNI, and it should still work. It's just that it won't respond to window resize changes. So if you change the size of the terminal at runtime, it won't figure out, but it should be able to run. The jar itself with the disabled JNI flag should be able to run reasonably portably. I guess it'll require Java 21. It'll also, I don't expect it, I'm 100% sure that it won't work on Windows. It probably will work in like the Windows subsystem for Linux. I've never tried, but I would not be surprised, because that's a pretty compatible interface. But like PowerShell or something, theoretically, it shouldn't be that difficult to get it to run in PowerShell, but it's not a priority at the moment. I remember installing open source Java libraries. I think it was called OpenJDK. Java libraries were required for no open software I was using. Yeah, probably the OpenJDK. I guess that's the open source implementation of Java. There's like the proprietary one, which from Oracle, which I guess probably you have to pay for or get a license or something. But I guess there's also a lot of, so there's the Java dependencies are confusing for multiple reasons. So there's the SDK, Software Development Kit. There's the JRE, so the Java Runtime Environment. JDK, the Java Development Kit. I think the JRE, that's just for running. It's probably like a lighter version. And then JDK is if you want to also compile, I think. And then also there's a whole bunch of there was, I think it was, they used to do the versioning. It was like 1.8, 1.9, 1.10 or something. And then there's like an equivalence for some, like this 1.11, but that's the same as version 11. And then they went to like, they just, the number after the number 1, that became the version number. So it's a huge source of confusion. LWK2EZ says, hello, how's it going? right, that did not crash. That's good. Thanks for answering my question. Be heading out. Have a good night. It's windy out. All right, that was actually productive. The stream is a lot more productive when there's not as many chatters. So now that all of these calls send signals to the client that's requesting memory, all of those are centralized in here now. One of the things I'll do eventually, I'll do that I guess tomorrow, is I'll just add these to a list. So I'll have like a debug flag. So for testing, I'll instantiate this with a like debug equals true or something. And then the signal will get added to an array. And then at the end, then I can have like a function like validate script or something. Validate signal script. And that should simplify it. Do you use conditional loops for loading scripts? Conditional loops for loading scripts. Do you mean in the game? Like bash scripts, or the game is written in Java? So the game itself doesn't have a lot of scripting in it. I do have some scripts for the build process, and they're pretty simple. There's a script to actually build and run it. What do you think about OS age verification coming January 2027? Yeah, I saw some news things about that. And then I saw like a flurry of activity of like Linux developers trying to figure out how to implement that. I don't know. I mean, mandating that be like I think there's very few precedents for an open source operating system being mandated to have certain things. Like there's historically been restrictions against strong cryptography, and I think that's still kind of the case. Although I think it's kind of trivial to find. I think for like strict compliance, you are not supposed to export strong cryptography. But in practice, I think like when I think you use the JDK, the Oracle JDK, you're just like, say, I agreed not to export this to the list of sanctioned countries or something. But I think that's the only other requirement that I know of. Maybe the other one would be like there might be certain radio software, like stuff like Well, the restriction would probably even be on the power level. Like you can't. Yeah, I'm sure there's restrictions on like you cannot write code. Or I guess you probably could commit code that like ups the power level, the output power level of your Wi-Fi to like beyond what the FCC dictates is the maximum output level for a radio transmitter or something. So we could probably theoretically commit that code, but you would not be allowed to run it. But age verification, I don't know. I think that's going to be a difficult sell. Scary practice. It says law applies to hobbyists too. I don't even know how they say it's going to be verification. But a verification based on what authority? So like, is it going to have to be tied to like I guess I'll have to read up on. I'm not well informed enough because like, let's say it's a hobbyist operating system. How is a random small hobbyist operating system going to correctly identify the age of something? Like I have a microkernel that I wrote for a small embedded system. Am I supposed to actually that makes for a good community post. I should, because I have like an 800 line microkernel that's out there tying identity to device. Yeah, I'll have to try and understand what this whole thing is, because I'm sure this will be a controversy for a while. Yeah, tying identity to a device. I think there's maybe there's a case for like tying an identity, tying an like legally enforcement of tying an identity to a modem that is authorized to communicate in a specific network. So like if I want to access the ISP's network, then you could have something like that, and then people could like make their own local intranets. Trying to remove any remaining attempts at anonymity, just like the prefix to true 1984. Yeah. In a lot of ways, like I think people are going to find out ways to communicate. Like communication is so important. It's not even like it almost transcends anything political. It's almost like there's a biological need to communicate. If you try to snuff it out, people will find ways around it. Like if you try to keep cells from communicating via like hormonal signaling or something, they'll find a way. If you're a good boy, you'll be allowed to connect to the ISP's network and wider network. Otherwise, you step out of bounds. Good luck. I think there's a real dilemma here, because in terms of like, liberty and freedoms and stuff, if we have a world where every device requires that you be tied to your identity, that's going to cause huge reasons to still allow some anonymous access to the network. But on the flip side, with AI now, and I think this is almost certainly already becoming a problem, Like I think if for most of the internet, we're going to have a massive problem now with bots and AI. Like I talk about this endlessly on stream here. That when I'm chatting with people here, I can't tell. There's no way for me to tell if I'm chatting with AI. I may be like you guys might be AI right now, for all I know. But really, really sophisticated AI. But we're basically at that level with ChatGPT now, and if we don't have some kind of way of filtering out bots, what I think is going to happen is we're going to have like massive waves of bots that are like going to completely take over and saturate the internet, and then convince people to vote in a specific way, or to like bots are tireless. You can have like a single laptop, could have an army of bots that could like swing the entire election, or convince people of like a certain financial reality, or convince everyone to buy or sell gold. But a secondary intent is to circumvent any VPN type usage as well. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to try and use this to implement like total control. But at the same time, like on the extreme end, like I said, with embedded devices, how does this work with embedded devices? Like, what about Raspberry Pi OS? Or what about if you have an Arduino that has a Wi-Fi chip in it? That's a Arduino that talks to an ESP8266. Do you have to put identity verification on your Arduino? Also trying to make their own VPN. So then they probably can outlaw normal VPNs. We'd have to use theirs. They're probably going to try, and they're probably going to fail. Mental Outlaw explained it. Yeah, I'll have to check out his video. Can't have anonymity if verified identity is associated with the device. I think like even on like when I'm looking at Twitter or something, I would like the option. Like there are times when I would like the option, like for some of my accounts, I have verified my identity because I'm like I don't really care. And I also want to I want the reputational boost of them knowing I'm not a bot. But if they intentionally allowed the unchecked expansion of chatbots as a pretext, hey, we just want to make sure you're real. And they could do that as a pretext, but even if they don't do that, other countries and like other foreign state actors or just like scammers, there's I think people maybe overestimate like the how much like a central authority in the government is pushing this, but there's also just like billionaires and stuff who like finance these things and try to push laws through, and there's these people exist in every country in the world, so there's any number of actors and organizations that would like put out bots trying to convince everyone to move to a certain country or buy. I've even heard stuff about I heard there was like a dating app scam where this app it would message people and be like, hey, I'm really interested in you, let's eat at this restaurant on this date, and then people would go there and it was just a bot that sent the message, and then they would go to this restaurant and then get stood up for a date, and because they're there, they're like, okay, well, I guess I'll order a meal. And it was I don't know, the company somehow opted into this scam just to scam people out of a meal and drive some revenue. So that's just think about how many millions of people, how many millions of variations of scams we could have a super sophisticated AI, and if we don't have some way of filtering out all the AI bots, then I think the freedom and liberty questions are extremely important, but at the same time, the like spam reduction and like AI filtering questions are like just as important, because that's the kind of like both of them are non-negotiable things that we need to have. I think it'll get to the point where you have to provide ID to check against already gathered ID to even buy the device in the future. Cell phones are like that. When you set up a cell phone, it's almost like your phone number and is like basically like an identity almost, which kind of makes sense because two-factor authentication, more and more stuff is relying on that. It's becoming like it's like a central way of authenticating yourself. So the ownership of like the ownership and freedom on phones is kind of already lost. Last chat got censored. Yeah, typical. Anytime we discuss the important things, always get censored. Well, I'm probably going to leave it there for tonight. This was a incrementally productive night, I think. Hopefully, if I can, I hope this new approach to building up the unit test works. Tomorrow I'll maybe work on this a bit during the day to try and power through this so I can move on. And I'll focus on just creating that script and then validating it, and then hopefully that way it'd be much easier to kind of add the constraints and debug things with a script of what's going on. All right, we'll leave it there for tonight. We'll be back again tomorrow night for day 227. All right, have a good night.